Tony Schiavone and I on What Happened When tomorrow, we actually sit down and watch the empty arena match because, believe it or not, Tony never saw it.
Oh, wow.
That happened, of course, in April of '81. Funk started wrestling in 1965. Before anyone landed on the moon, Terry Funk was in a wrestling ring. Lyndon B. Johnson was the president when Terry Funk climbed between the ropes for the first time professionally. It's all he knew. His dad was a wrestler. His brother was a wrestler. Together, they became the first brothers that were NWA champions. And along the way, he lost his high school sweetheart, Miss Vicky, because of wrestling. He gave him that belt back that he won in 1975. By 1977, he said, "You know what? I want to win the greatest win of my career back, and that'd be my wife Vicky." And he got her. And sadly, we lost her a few years ago. And man, Terry was finally back with his real tag team partner, not his brother Dory, but his lovely wife Vicky. And what a legacy he leaves behind, not just as the NWA champion or that fabulous retirement moment in '83 over in Japan, forever with him and Dory, or even the crazy empty arena match a couple years prior with Lawler, those famous motor oil interviews as he just tore up Florida with Dusty Rhodes. But then he wrestled Hulk Hogan on Saturday night's main event, right when wrestling got really hot in '85. And then he leaves and conquers Hollywood. He's working with Sylvester Stallone in a couple of movies. And then Patrick Swayze. And that movie comes out in May of '89, the same month that he attacks Ric Flair and makes his return and has one of the greatest years any wrestler could ever have, doing it all with a partially broken back. I mean, it's unbelievable to think what Terry Funk accomplished, and that would have been enough. But he came back and he breathed life, and ECW was built on his back as the Eastern Championship Wrestling Champion. And then, of course, when they finally get on pay-per-view, it's his story in the main event of him winning the world title and an unbelievable barbed wire match that really was the lifeblood of ECW to sell those video cassettes, because that's what they were. They were trying to sell those videotapes, man. That was how they made their cash cow. And then he has his WrestleMania moment, and it's a big one with against the New Age Outlaws and your pal Brian and our mutual friend Mick Foley. And then somehow he comes to WCW after all that. It's unbelievable the legacy this guy left behind and the number of people that he impacted, especially when you consider that the majority of his career wasn't even televised. There's no record of it. You can't go watch it on film. But I had a friend of mine who's kind of a new wrestling friend. He's trying to get into it, but he didn't grow up wrestling. He doesn't live it and breathe it like you and I have. And he was asking me about Terry Funk, and I had to think for a minute. And Jeff, I described him like this. I said, Terry Funk is your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. What sort of how would you define Terry Funk's legacy and impact on professional wrestling?
Everyone knew that Terry, his health was declining. So I'll just say, over the last several months, or maybe even a year. How long ago was he? It doesn't matter. But, I think he was diagnosed year and a half ago. I'm not exactly sure. I may be off on that. But just kind of thinking about Terry from time to time, there are so many different kind of flashes of my thoughts and my memories and how I view Terry. And you talk about a guy, and I don't want to say reinventing himself, because that kind of sounds like, I don't know if that sounds right, or evolving. I think maybe a better word, but just kind of through the years, my earliest memories are of my father's favorite world champion, and I've said this, was Dory, his brother. And my dad would look at me and say, I loved him as a champion. But now, if you want to talk about drawing money, now you got to have to take Terry. He just had such high respect for their different styles. And of course, Dorian and Terry's father. And, again, a family of promoters and wrestlers and minds and lifers, if you will, that kinship, that camaraderie, the just kind of the first time I met Terry. First time I met Terry was in Memphis, 88, 89, and he drug me around the ring. And, I think I've already told this story, or I don't know. Did I tell it last week about Terry? I don't know. No, where did I think I maybe have said that Saturday at Box Park. I'll tell that in a second, Conrad. But the empty arena match was one of those things that sitting in my dad's basement that I got to watch that 3/4 inch tape, not VHS tape. I got to watch that, and so from the early NWA champions to Terry in the empty arena, and then him coming in and working with Lawler in the late 80s. And, I can remember him arriving at, I didn't work ECW, but I was obviously aware of all that. But when he arrived at the WWF, right at the height of the Attitude Era, I was a little bit, I don't say, it kind of let me down that he went as Chainsaw Charlie. It didn't go as Terry. It was that, but man, he made that work. And then you just referenced the tag title match and the Mania moment. And then at WCW, you talk about some crazy times. He was the commissioner, and yes, so me and Terry worked quite a bit together in the WCW days. But all through that, it was like Terry. My personal relationship would be that, yeah, he's a man's man, but such a unique personality. But I always felt like, and I say this out of unbelievable respect, that we would sit down and it's just like, okay, it's our family business. And that's how he always related it to. He would bring up my dad or my grandmother or Eddie Marley, my grandfather, or my uncle Thomas, my great uncle Thomas, or just kind of the family business, in that we just talked shop about wrestling. And it was so natural. And I was always a little bit in awe because of what you kind of stated. He was world champion in the 70s. So his career spanning 40, 50 years, and him evolving and staying on top, and his ability, a moonsault, dude doing a moonsault on, his in-ring ability and athleticism at the very end of his career still kind of mesmerized me. They'll never, ever, ever, ever be, and it's a different time, a different era. But man, as they say, when God made Terry Funk, he completely threw away the mold.